Today on CityCast Austin, y'all, my allergies have been killing me this month. And honestly, it feels like it's always allergy season around here because apparently we live in the allergy capital of the country. My guest today is here with some tips for survival. It's Tuesday, February 18th. I'm Nikki Devon, and this is what Austin's talking about. Hello, I'm here today with Dr. Alan Lieberman, allergist with the Austin Family Allergy and Asthma. Hello, Dr. Lieberman. How are you?
Very good. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. So I'm going to get right into it because allergies are killing me. They're killing our team in general, so I should care about everybody. But the allergies are out of control for me right now. What's happening in the air right now in Austin?
Well, we're kind of at the tail end of cedar season. And if I could start with a small joke, I've come to bury cedar, not praise it. That's a quote I get to use once in a while. But we really are kind of at the tail end of the cedar season. The recent rain we had and bad weather a few weeks ago really curtailed it a great deal. And so I really anticipate moving forward over the next few weeks, people's allergies will get better in general. And we can start looking forward to spring season. That'll be next.
You've been here since 1995. What are our allergy seasons here in Austin, and how have they changed over time?
What makes Austin, a lot of people will call Austin the allergy capital. It's one of those things where people take a lot of pride in their diseases where, people don't call it the diabetes capital, but, everyone calls it the allergy capital. And what makes Austin so unique is that we have three major pollen seasons where we have fall, winter, and spring, where most other parts of the country, they'll have a real winter. So they essentially have two major pollen seasons, fall and spring. So this third major season in the wintertime is so unique. And as you were saying, it's usually the one season that gets people the most.
So I'm curious, has this year's season been any different than other years? Is cedar going away kind of early this year, or what do you think it's going to look like?
Well, it's probably not some good news for you. It's probably some bad news. But, after, kind of after action, we can look and see what was the season like. And now that the season is kind of winding down, I would not call this a terrible season, meaning that we did not have the volume of phone calls. We did not have the number of people who were absolutely miserable, suffering, who needed to go on steroid treatments. And so on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd probably call this season maybe a 4. I think last year was like an 8 or a 9. Last year got started early, it ended late. We didn't really have like a major weather event to kind of pause it, where we just had last year many, many cold, windy, dry days, which is actually prime days for bad allergy seasons. And this past year, the season got off to a little bit of a later start. It was definitely closer to New Year's. And then also we just had a lot of weather. Any type of moisture, precipitation will dramatically lower the counts, even if it's not measurable rainfall. Just having moisture in the air will definitely lower it. So, looking back right now, we just didn't see the pollen counts in 10, 20,000 like we've seen in the past.
So what I'm hearing is that I just have little baby lungs. I'm just struggling at the least.
Yeah, like the canary, right? But it's but there's things you can do for it, because you can definitely get more proactive. And what you said also is getting started on things early does make a lot of sense. So a lot of people wait for that first or second round of cedar to really slam them. Then they try to play catch up with their medications. One thing I wanted to mention also, what makes cedar such a unique allergen, not just that it's a major winter allergen, which is very rare for most of the country. You see pollen counts, I mentioned 10, 20,000, where like a bad day for oak pollen or ragweed pollen would be 800, 1,000. I mean, to see a pollen count that goes up to 10,000 is just really, really incredible. So not only is it a very, very potent allergen, but it's produced in such large amounts. I mean, you see it coming off the tree, it looks like smoke. And I mean, that's all cedar pollen. And so to have a pollen that's so potent and produced in such large quantities, I mean, just makes it a real menace to everybody.
Why are some people susceptible to certain allergies and other people aren't? Because I feel like even just in my family, My niece and struggle with it more than anyone else in our family.
Yeah, well, that's a Nobel Prize winner right there. Anyone who can answer that question, you're going to win the Nobel Prize because they're struggling to understand that. Why does some people develop an allergy to peanut? Other people have an allergy to, they can eat all the peanuts they want, but they can't eat a cashew. Or why do some kids
Yeah.
have egg allergy and other kids outgrow their egg allergy? So there's definitely a strong genetic component. So usually allergies run in families, not to the same thing. So like dad might be allergic to cedar, kid might be allergic to oak, but allergies are very, very strong genetics. The problem with allergies and genetics is that there are multiple genes involved, and some are expressed and some aren't. So the genetics behind allergy are not simple, straightforward, like blood group. If your parents have a blood group of this, then you'll have a blood group of something else. But allergies are much more complex, so it involves the hereditary plus the environmental exposures and timing of exposures. And that's why most people tend not to have allergies the first year here. They tend to live here. You have to get exposed to an allergen in a susceptible person to develop the allergy. But I've seen people here, miserable their first year. I've seen people live here 20 years before they become symptomatic. So it really is all across the board.
I have several friends that have told me they've moved from different places and they're like, I never had allergies. And I've been here 4 years and now all of a sudden, here the allergies come. So I'm fascinated that, you know what I mean? Like you get lulled into this false sense of security.
Yeah.
And then one day it's like, bam, nope, you have allergies. Good luck.
Yeah, the realtors don't tell that to people before they move here. Like whatever your allergies are in Chicago, they're going to be a lot worse in Austin. And a lot of it has to do with we just have longer growing seasons and we have that third major season in the wintertime. So people who move here from the Northeast and the Midwest with allergies, and they're not used to getting hit in the wintertime.
So maybe there are some people that are listening who are lucky and I am envious of that don't know what allergies feel like. And so can you give us a little explanation of like what allergies feel like?
Yeah, for most people describe it, they feel like they have a cold all the time. You can't sleep at night because your nose is congested, it's constantly running, itchy eyes, watery nose, sneezing. And I think you mentioned earlier, is it a cold? Is it allergies? And kind of the name cedar fever has just been like it's a brilliant marketing brand, but in truth it's not really a cedar tree and there's no fever. So one way to tell the difference would be that if you do have a true fever like temperature 101, 102, then it probably is not allergies. And so just being congested all the time but feeling like you have a cold is really a very, very common symptom people have. And it can also lead to other problems, such as a bad sinus infection. So you start with bad allergies, and then your sinuses get infected. And then for many people, though, it can bring on their asthma. So allergies are a major trigger for asthma. So you see many people who their asthma gets out of control during the wintertime.
What are some of the best ways that people can treat allergy symptoms? And is this something that we can ever be cured of?
Yeah, that's a great question. So basically, there's three parts of treatment of allergies. One is avoid your allergens, which, good luck with that. Most of these allergens are outdoors. People can make better decisions. Don't play golf when the cedar counts 10,000. Don't run around town lake. Exercise indoors. But avoidance is really, really difficult. So most people can't really do that. And then most people will dose up on the medications. Like you said, everything's over the counter now, so you can do a good nasal spray. Nasal steroids work great. You can do the allergy medicine like Zyrtec, Allegra. They all have generics. And if that's not really working well for you, or despite taking these meds, you're still pretty symptomatic and having more bad days than good days, then those are the people who should really think about immunotherapy. And immunotherapy used to always mean allergy shots, which would mean coming to the doctor's office and taking a shot, 1 or 2 shots in your arm. And now we actually offer allergy drops. So there's two options. Some people are better candidates for allergy injections. Other people are better candidates for allergy drops. But what these therapies try to do, it tries to target the immune system into making you a less allergic person. So instead of just symptomatic treatment with medications, you're actually trying to turn your body into becoming less allergic, reduce your immune response. So when these seasons do roll around, you're not so miserable. And boy, immunotherapy has been a game changer for many, many people.
I'm allergic to cats and dogs. And so for a while when I was younger, I would get allergy shots that in my head, for some reason, I thought it was specifically just for cats and dogs.
Oh,
And even now, I'm like, oh, you can get allergy shots for other things. I don't know why I did not know that,
oh,
but it's blowing my mind a little bit that you can get allergy shots for cedar or drops, or
yeah.
that's kind of great.
So all the major inhalant allergens like pets, dust, pollens, molds, and you can even do allergy shots for things like fire ants and bee stings. So you could treat with immunotherapy for a lot of these things, and it's extremely safe and effective. I mean, allergy shots have been around for like 100 years, and so they really have a great track record. And like I said, it's the closest thing to trying to get to be a cure, where the goal of allergy shots is you do the shots for 3 to 5 years and then try to stop them. And hopefully you have like a long-term carryover benefit. Some people can't stop their shots. They need to stay on them, or they don't want to stop them because they're feeling so much better. But for people who, again, have tried everything else, they tried all the medications out there and are still miserable, immunotherapy is the way to go.
For me, if I'm having a bad flare up, Benadryl just knocks it out.
Mm-hmm.
It also, unfortunately, knocks me out. It just takes me a long time to recover from Benadryl for some reason. Do we know what the differences are between these over-the-counter meds like Zyrtec versus Benadryl?
Yeah.
Because Claritin seems to not work for me.
The 80s are calling. They want your Benadryl back. I mean, no one does that anymore. I mean, it's like that's really going old school. I mean, the Benadryl, it's very, very effective, but it's very short acting. And it's also obviously very sedating. So, I mean, certainly pilots can't take it. People who are going to be driving, or people, it's a really, really hard one for students to take. And a lot of studies have shown that if you don't treat your allergies, you do poorly in school. And if you treat your allergies with the wrong medicine, like Benadryl, you tend to do even more poorly or worse because of the sedating effects. And so there's been a real improvement with these new allergy medicines that are out there, mainly the fexofenadine, which is the generic Allegra, and the generic Clarinex. I mean, those are once a day, long acting and non-sedating. And so for many people, doing that in the morning would be preferred, and supplementing it with a nasal spray. So people kind of do both things. Some people will supplement their medications with a D. Those are the medicines you have to show your license to get because it has a decongestant in it. Yeah. And those can be actually more effective when you use it with a decongestant. But for most people, I don't like them taking decongestants day in, day out every day because of side effects of it can keep you awake at night. It may make you jittery. It can make your heart race. And so for a once in a while use, these Sudafed, additives to the medications can be very helpful. But personally, I don't think it's a good long-term treatment option.
Hey y'all, it's Nikki. I have to tell you about Tecovas boots. I finally have a pair, and I don't know if y'all know this, but they're handmade, high quality, and stylish. And they're comfortable right outside of the box. Now, I know we buy everything online these days, but trust me, you have to get fitted for some boots at Tecovas. Now, whether you're like me, a newbie to boots, or you have a closet full of them, the folks at Tecovas will help you find your next favorite pair. So, grab a friend, head on over to the Tecovas flagship on South Congress or their store at the Domain. Plus, good news, they just opened a store in Georgetown at 709 Main Street for those of you that live just a little further north. With 3 locations in town, you have no excuses. So, that's tecovas.com, TECOVAS.com. Don't go gently, y'all.
What sort of promises have you made to yourself this year? Maybe get in better shape or eat healthier, save more money, travel somewhere new. What about discovering a new culture by learning a new language? With Babbel, you can do that in just a few weeks. I'm CityCast CEO David Plotz, and I'm having such a good time learning Spanish on Babbel this year. I'm taking a trip to Mexico City in the spring, and Babbel is giving me the Spanish foundation that's going to make my trip so much better. Babbel's quick 10-minute lessons, handcrafted by more than 200 language experts, get you to begin speaking your new language in 3 weeks or at whatever pace you choose. And because conversing is the key to really understanding each other in a new language, Babbel is designed using practical, real-world conversations. And one way they do that is with their own podcasts. I'm a podcast listener. I'm guessing since you're listening to this podcast, you are too. And I have been getting ready for my Mexico City trip by listening to Babbel's conversational podcasts. There's a short conversation you listen to, then an instructor talks you through what happened, and then you listen again, and then you catch everything when you listen that second time. There's also a great read-along transcript, too, which I love. The one I did today was with Maria and Carmela trying to make dinner plans, but Carmela is so busy. She's way too busy with work and yoga, but finally they agreed on brunch on Saturday. Studies from Yale, Michigan State, and other universities continue to prove that Babbel works. One study found that using Babbel for 15 hours is equivalent to a full semester at college. So let's get more of you talking in a new language. Babbel is gifting CityCast listeners 60% off subscriptions at babbel.com/CityCast. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/CityCast. Spelled BABBEL.com/CityCast. Babbel.com/CityCast. Rules and restrictions may apply.
There's no place like Texas, except when it comes to skiing. We know you're heading to seek snowier pastures this winter. Before you leave, grab one last taste of the real Texas in Amarillo. Hike, ride, or roll your way through the beauty of Palo Duro Canyon, the second largest canyon in the U.S., while your legs still feel fresh. Carbo load with that last taste of glorious Tex-Mex before you pivot to warm soups and chalet charcuterie. Or sneak into a speakeasy and enjoy a well-crafted cocktail before those shot skis get passed around. Amarillo is quirky and wild, Western, and spontaneous. You can spray paint a Cadillac, cruise Route 66, or find a cowgirl hat to complete the outfit that's been missing something. Whether we catch you on the way there or the way back, we can't wait to hear your stories and pour you a drink. The mountains may be calling, but Amarillo will make you proud to call Texas home. Visit Amarillo and après-ski into the real Texas. I have heard this rumor that Zyrtec is something that you can take forever. But if you have been taking it for a long amount of time and then you just stop taking it, what seems to happen to me is that I itch. Mm-hmm. Like my hands start to itch. I've heard that it's kind of like a withdrawal from not using it. I don't know if that's true or if that's just BS. And so I'm trying to figure out, like, do our allergies or our reactions to allergies, is it always changing, or do some of us, this is just what we have for life and we just gotta like stay on the Benadryl, you know what I mean? Like
the itchy skin allergy tends to be a different mechanism that is well controlled with the antihistamines such as Zyrtec. So that might be a different problem that might have evolved in someone like you. So generally the nice thing is people don't get addicted to these medications. But for most people, it's just their allergies just become worse. Their allergies for whatever reason, and the medications just don't cut it anymore. So a lot of times people will switch from one allergy med to the other. And, some people that works, some people it doesn't. But usually once you tried all the major brands out there, like I said, those are the people who are good candidates for immunotherapy.
So it just sounds like, if your allergies change throughout your life, they could change for any number of reasons, just because we're changing, right? Like it just kind of seems like it's part of the deal. Yeah,
allergies, really, really peak in young ages, where we see a lot of kids, a lot of young adults. One of the benefits of aging, you lose your eyesight, but your allergies might get better. You tend to make less of allergy antibody as you get older. So there's less people who are going to start allergy shots in their 60s and versus their 30s. Getting allergy tested somewhere along the way, there's different ways of doing the testing. There's skin tests and blood tests, but checking with a board certified allergist, and there's really easy ways. There's the Academy of Allergy, where you can find a board certified allergist near you where you live, and then get tested and see what your best treatment options are.
So I got tested for allergy when I was young, and then it just started to be something that we do because surprise, I'm allergic to everything. But do you think that allergy tests are just a good place to start? Because, like, if it wasn't for the allergy test, I would not have known I was allergic to bees. I wouldn't have known I was allergic to dust mites. And so, just like in general, do you think that just getting an allergy test is a smart thing? Or should we just assume, like, we know what we're allergic to?
No, I really don't think. I mean, most people don't need to get tested. Again, if you take a Zyrtec and you feel totally fine, you're not missing work, you're not missing school, and you feel great, and you take it and it works really, really super well. Most people are fine with that. So somewhere along the way, getting tested to identify what your allergens are can be helpful. It can help if there's something in the environment that you could be avoiding, helps to target the right medicines. But, for people who have persistent problems and the medications aren't really working well, then absolutely they need to get tested. And, I would strongly recommend a board certified allergist who has specialty training in diagnosing, treating allergies, immunotherapy. That's kind of a good way to start.
What are the things that we should be doing to address allergies, like in the off season? I know that, like
Mm-hmm.
you mentioned in December at the beginning, start front loading that Zyrtec if you know you
Yeah.
have cedar fever.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned just like avoidance. Are there any other things off season that we could be doing?
Well, mainly that would be immunotherapy. So if you wanted to start allergy drops, which are the drops are sublingual, so they're given under the tongue, and you can do them at home. Much less risk of a allergic reaction, so much better safety profile. So you let people do it at home, and so that's an option. And those need to be started 3 or 4 months before the season. So if you had like a really really bad season, like right now for cedar, you'll have this little bit of a window period where February is usually a good month before the oak comes out. Get yourself tested and get on a good short term as well as a long term allergy plan. And if you start drops, you need to start those 3 or 4 months before the season. So for cedar season next year, we start the drops in the fall. Allergy shots, people generally want to start those at least 6 months before the season to allow an adequate buildup. So, what kind of happens is people, they suffer through their season and then they put it on the to-do list and then they don't get it done. And then, the next season rolls around and they're bad shape again. So, getting yourself tested would be like really, really important, and try to look at immunotherapy options if you had a really, really bad season. One of the things that we use as kind of a tipping point for whether you need immunotherapy would be if you need steroids to get you through a season. Steroids would be given either orally, like pills, or it could be an injection where people get, and they call it like their allergy shot, and they get it once a year. I mean, steroids just have a lot of bad short-term and really bad long-term side effects, and it's just not a good option to treat allergies with a steroid shot every year for the next 30, 40 years, because it will
Ooh.
thin out the skin, thin out the bones, makes you more prone to fracture, appetite, weight gain, just a ton of issues with steroids. And so to us, that's a tipping point that if you needed a steroid shot or a steroid treatment to get you through the season, get yourself tested and get on a good course of immunotherapy.
I want to talk about homemade immunotherapy. So there is an Israeli snack called a bamba, and it's basically a Cheeto puff with peanut butter dust, and Israeli people feed it to their kids when they're young to develop immunity. Does that work?
It works amazingly well. In fact, we're doing it here in the office. So what they found is that if you introduce allergic foods early to children, it'll help prevent food allergies from developing. So what they found is that Israeli kids, because everyone in Israel eats bamba. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's like 80, 90% of households have it, and it's fed to kids at
Wow.
a very, very young age. And so what researchers noticed is that Israeli kids don't have peanut allergy, and they compared it to kids in other countries, and they found that there's significant reduction. And so, the early introduction of food allergens is really, really important. It's really funny you mention it because I have a 6-month-old granddaughter, and we fed her bamba. I was up there last weekend visiting in Dallas, and we fed her bamba for the first time, and she loved it because there's a lot of evidence that if you delay feeding allergic foods until they're 2 or 3 years of age, you kind of miss the window of opportunity and miss the boat. It's a really interesting food, and you can buy it at Trader Joe's. They sell it at HEB, and they're like peanut puffs. And so it's not peanut dust; it's actually peanut flour. that's in it. And, once you eat it a few times, it tastes pretty good, but it's a very unique food.
Oh, I'm absolutely trying it.
Yeah.
I do not have any peanut allergies, but
Yeah.
I'm still trying it. So along those lines, like, is there a way for us to expose our babies and children to cedar pollen young, or does it not work that way?
That's a little difficult because that's more of an intermittent allergen. And
Yeah,
so what
okay.
they tend to notice that in kids, like the first sign of allergy in children is eczema, which would be very itchy skin. And if you have a 6-month-old and they have pretty significant eczema, they're really set up high risk to develop allergies, peanut allergy, pet allergy, cedar allergy, asthma. And so the presence of that is a kind of a warning sign. So these are kids that need to be treated more aggressively, get tested at a younger age. There have actually been some studies that have shown that if you grow up in a house where you have a dog or a cat, you may be less likely to develop asthma at a later date. So there is evidence of early exposure in certain children, that pet exposure, and that has to go back to this kind of immune system hypothesis that our immune systems right now aren't really being challenged. And so if you expose kids at a young age to pets, like kids who grow up on farms have less allergens than kids who don't grow up on farms. And I think it's exposure to certain types of, not so much allergens, but fecal protein. I'm trying to think of a better way to say it, but it's like fecal, not protein, but fecal organisms, bacteria. And so, and that's kind of like this whole hygiene hypothesis is really showing that it probably is true. And that's why this whole thing with a 5-second rule, if the kids get dirty and play in the dirt, it's probably an okay thing. So.
You got to get good germs. You got to get good germs.
Yeah, it's the lack of early exposure to germs might be part of the reason why we have more allergens now than we did, say, 100 years ago. It's also a hypothesis that's, there's a lot to it.
So you mentioned earlier that the yearly steroids are not necessarily a good thing to do long term. So are the steroids in those yearly shots different from like nasal steroids? Are the nose sprays steroids or no?
Yeah, they are. The nasal sprays do have steroids, but they're in micrograms when if you get a steroid shot, you're getting a milligram. So it's a huge difference. And so the topical delivery where you take a very low dose to the nose has very, very, very little systemic overall side effects in the body versus a large dose in the hip or orally has much more. It has to do with dosing and delivery. So that's a really good question. So some people are a little scared off of the nasal sprays, but they are very, very safe and effective.
Now I'm going to be nosy. I'm curious. You got here in 1995. What's your allergy story? Do you have allergies?
No, not really. It's like I was.
Oh my God.
No, I've been very blessed. Very, very, very blessed with that. And so, yeah, we got here in '95. I was in the military, so I was up at Fort Cavazos for 3 years. I was the allergist up there, and looking for a place to settle. And you couldn't pick a better place than Austin, a growing city at the time. And like I said, we have year-round allergens here, so it's we're busy all year round. And now we see a lot of children with food allergies. And so that keeps us busy all the time now. So you have the pollen allergens during the major seasons. And then you have these food allergies now, which has kind of crept up over the past 20 years. And it keeps us very busy.
So now that we're coming out of cedar, we're coming out of winter, what is our primary allergen for spring? Or do we have a primary allergen? Or is it just...
No, you do. It's actually, it's number 2 on the hit list where cedar is like number 1 that gets the most people. And then oak is a really close second. Going back to what you said before, it used to be like April 1st was when oak would really peak. And now we're really starting to see these seasons, for various reasons, starting earlier and lasting longer. So, usually around spring break is when people start noticing more like the spring pollen. And that's going to be when all your decks and the driveways get covered in this yellow pollen. Yeah, that's oak. And then oak is followed right away by grass. And so for most people here, once it gets really hot in the summertime, that's actually the good season for most people because the allergens kind of burn out. There's really not a whole lot going on. We have those days, it's 110 degrees and it hasn't rained in a month. I mean, most people do really, really well from an allergy point of view, but again, molds are all year round, dust is all year round, pets are all year round. So there's always something, right?
Listen, summertime is my favorite time of year.
Yeah.
So I don't care how hot it is. It's when I breathe the best. I have a completely different body in the
Yeah,
summertime.
absolutely.
It's night and day. It's night and day.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. I love it. Okay, so is there anything else that you want to add about allergies and the allergy seasons that I did not ask you about?
No, it was actually very, very thorough. I think we covered a lot of things, but we really want people to understand that they don't have to suffer with this, that there are really, really good treatments available for people. And if people say, well, I can't do shots, I don't like needles, I can't commit to the time, the drops are a good choice. Drops are extremely popular in Europe. I mean, in fact, they don't really do allergy shots in Europe very much, and many people do in the drops. And so we know that they're very, very safe and effective, and they've really become very popular here now in the U.S. The disadvantage of drops is that they're not covered by insurance, so it tends to be a little pricier. But for people, for certain seasons and for convenience, it's well worth it, so they don't have to miss work, miss school, suffer with their allergies. And so there really, really is a lot of good treatments that are available out there for people.
I'm going to have to come and give me some of these drops. Dr. Lieberman,
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here today. This has been so helpful. You have no idea. This has been wonderful for me because I have been struggling.
Yeah.
I've been struggling.
Yeah.
So thank you for being here.
Well, you need to come and get tested, and we'll get you fixed up.
I think it's actually time for me to get tested. So
Definitely.
You might actually see my face in your office because I need it.
Look forward to it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's all for today here on CityCast Austin. You can find links to Dr. Lieberman's work in our show notes. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell a friend, rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our Hey Austin newsletter. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Bye, y'all.